What's up, everyone? Well, we're back here for round 5 on our transforming a mass market ficus into a masterpiece. All right, well, before we do anything else, let's take a look at first where we started, then what happened since part 4. Oh. All right, and now to the project at hand. So basically, as you can see, I have been doing some wiring and some shoot thinning, as well as just allowing the tree to grow out. But what we haven't done up to this point is address the roots. And like we saw in the Cheng Cheng book in part 4, I really want to make this trunk as interesting as possible. So it's gotten a little bit bigger, but it hasn't necessarily added character while we're doing this branch work. So we're gonna do some root work, and then we're gonna take a look at, or take a stab at, trying to get it to have a little bit more interesting shape. Before I repot this, just to make my life easier as well as easier for you guys to see, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this back significantly. Maybe not as far as I would initially. I'll probably come back and cut it back again after we're done here. But it's just going to be a giant mess of an octopus to play with here if I try to repot this while it has this many branches that are this long on it. All right, so now I have a lot more cuttings, and it's going to be a lot easier to see what we're doing. So let's go ahead and get started on the repotting. Now, having kind of raked out the top first and then cut off 75% of the bottom, I'm going to get in here underneath and try to remove any really big roots that are going to be problematic in terms of getting it into a small pot. All right, and now we're kind of back down to the root ball that we started with, and I'm gonna go ahead and remove the old soil from what I'm thinking of as the front. It's developing some pretty good wood in the roots, but I need to be sure that I can get this into a shohin container later. So I actually am going to cut off some of the larger roots that are kind of going out laterally so that I can maintain that size in terms of the finished root ball. With all of that root work, now would be a good time to kind of do an analysis and see whether the angle that I have it at is actually the angle that I'm ultimately going to want. When I look at the tree from the side, there's a little bit more movement in it, but it's also skinnier. So I'm going to leave the tree at pretty much the same angle it was at before. I've had this in my greenhouse for pretty much this entire time since we started part 1, and it hasn't issued any aerial roots. So the greenhouse has a reasonably high humidity, and I would expect that it would want to issue some aerial roots. So in order to encourage it to do so, I am adding this little plastic container here as an auxiliary container, and I'm going to just lightly, not pack in, but just push in some sphagnum moss around the tree so that the environment around the trunk stays relatively moist. Like I said at the beginning of this video, the intention here is to create aerial roots, and the purpose of creating the aerial roots is to increase the shape, the interest in the shape of the trunk. So I'm hoping to get some roots coming from up here near our primary branches, and then those will kind of snake down the trunk and create more veining essentially in the side of the trunk. I don't know about you, but I've never tried this before, but I do know that these guys like to make roots from almost anywhere, and I have seen it make roots from like up above the soil line in the greenhouse, but the roots didn't really take off and go anywhere. So this is going to sort of encourage that to happen. And lastly, now that we can't even really see the trunk on our tree, I am going to come back here and recut some of these branches, as I promised, back to shorter lengths, because as I mentioned, I want to create kind of short branching that has a lot of character in it. And the farther I get out from the trunk at this stage, the sort of more loose the entire composition looks. Well, if you didn't think I was crazy after the last video, you probably think I'm crazy now. That wraps up this video, part 5 of our transforming a mass market ficus into a masterpiece. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.